What episode is this again?
We're at episode 20, if I know what you watched last week.
This is fun, Sig.
20, yeah. And
A
it's our
bit of a milestone.
third Halloween episode.
So this is a Halloween special of Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Nightmare, as I
Can
like
you see
to
the
call him.
glove? Is that in shot?
Yeah, the glove's in the shot.
Yeah.
It's not in great light, but
But it's there.
it's there.
In spirit and physically.
So we watched the first three: A Nightmare on Elm Street, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2: Freddy's Revenge,
Yeah.
and number 3, Dream Warriors.
Yeah. And before we get into this horror movie review, a little bit of YouTube algorithming there.
Horror movie review.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen the second one.
I'm pretty sure you had seen it, but you
If
don't,
I have, I had
you
erased
don't
it from my
remember it.
memory because I don't recollect any of it. But I know I'd
We would
seen.
have seen it earlier on. We've definitely seen it.
I know
Well,
I'd seen the
you've definitely
third
seen it.
one. I'd obviously seen the first one.
That's the reason. So you just said, you know, you watched the third one beforehand, so that's why you've seen the third one, because you've seen the second one as well.
But you don't always do it like that, so it's not like it's a given.
I didn't. Well, you'd never seen anything past the first one anyway, so obviously I'll just put on number 2 straight after that. So you have seen it was a while ago, and it was before you were, you know, the horror was starting to take hold. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah. Is this a kind of a not quite bottom of the barrel costume, but just one where you're like, right, there's one that I thought up where I can just put on clothes which I've got around the house and pick up the the awesome prop, I might add, that I made for Heathen.
I'd say this is one of the less lazy ones I've done.
This is one of the less lazy ones.
But I set myself the challenge of only using things that we have in the house, which I have to admit includes some very odd pieces of costumes, which I'm not expecting most people to have lying around.
Have we
but-
even mentioned what you are?
No, I'm a vampire hunter.
Yeah.
And I also have, you know, I've got an axe and a sword lying around, and I've got my little chest with whatever you need, garlic.
I've just
and-
got the pumpkin smiling gently back at me
You love
next
it.
to you. Yeah.
Yes,
I had
I'm
a good time
vampire hunter.
placing him.
You took forever, more time placing the pumpkin than you ever spent on the lighting or setup. But anyway, should we get into the Freddy movie review?
What is your ranking?
It was quite easy for me for this pick.
I wonder what number 1 is.
Third place was definitely for the second one. Then third place is second. No, wait. Third film is second place. Already confusing myself. So obviously the original gets first place.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same order. And weirdly enough, I used to have it the other way around. I used to put number 2 as the second best and number 3, but only because, maybe not only because, but I remember the first time I watched it, and it was so highly regarded within fans of the film series that I thought it must be great. It must be obviously not as good as the first one, but on some kind of level. And I was bitterly disappointed in certain things that I got.
I enjoyed watching all three of them.
And the reason that I liked number 2 was just because it was a bit more, well, not a bit more, less childish, should I say,
Right.
in a sense.
Okay.
That's not praise for either.
I could say about the second one, but I was thinking for this week, because we watched 1, 2 and 3, maybe we should just discuss them in that order.
So you want to go from A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Mm-hmm. Which was both of our top picks.
You have the floor.
It's hard to know where to begin with this one, because this is one that I'm certain everyone who watches our show will have seen.
Just give us some of your history with it then.
I guess it's probably one of the horror films I've seen most often. You would have showed it to me early on, and then we've had it
I've had it a lot.
as something to fall asleep to, which is a bit weird considering what it's about. But yeah, overall, I want to start by saying that this was
I do love to fall asleep to A Nightmare on Elm Street, yeah.
This
And
was
I hadn't even
definitely-
thought about that whole dream thing.
the most horror vibey film of the three to me.
Vibey.
horror vibe. Yeah, it felt the most like that. So what I don't know, you say something.
I just thought I'd hold back a bit and let you go, because obviously I could just go on forever about this movie.
Oh, go on then.
So what I'll say to begin with is, for me, this is one of the greatest horror movies, if not one of just the greatest movies of all time. And I want to know what you think of that opinion, first off.
I think it's genius in many ways, and I agree it could be one of the best horror movies. I don't know if I'd say it's one of the best movies.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I also I only saw this
Sometimes
the first
there's
time when I was already an
opinions, and
adult,
sometimes it's just right and wrong.
which is when did you first see this? How old were you?
Well, I was obsessed with this, as you've been told many a time that in my formative years, I grew up next door to a video rental store. So by the time I got to 3.5 to 4 years old, before I moved out of that house, my dad would take me in there on the weekends, and I'll just only hang out in the horror section, even from that age.
So do you remember the first time you saw A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember the first time I even saw the image of Freddy, which was in that video store. It was like for number 5 or something like this. And from that point on, I was obsessed with seeing it. I saw it at a young age, and then started going to New Year's Eve parties with my family and all their friends at about 6 years old, dressed as Freddy Krueger, the child molester / killer.
Yeah, and did
Quite
you
perverse.
say they were like Freddy Krueger bed sheets and all this kind of stuff aimed at kids?
Yeah, they sold him out for everything. You can buy a Freddy whatever you want.
That is quite disturbing.
Yeah, Freddy pajamas, Freddy bed sheets.
Although I guess they don't go like fully into the lore of Freddy in the first film. I think more of it's left a bit unsaid because you've got so much going on anyway.
I think enough is said that we know.
Yeah, I guess.
And we know just because we have the history now.
It's so weird. But
so why is this not? Are you saying that it is one of the best horror movies, but not one of the best movies?
I would say it's one of the best horror movies because I'd say even to this day it's quite unique. It was.
So you're not saying it's just not unique in general?
Yeah, I mean...
This is a completely unique premise.
I think the way they've built this character and everything around it is pretty incredible. But
You've got to forget everything and only focus on the first movie. Forget anything else what Freddy became or what the movies are after this. You've only got to focus on the first movie. And as we know, Wes Craven directed this. He also directed Scream. But Kevin Williamson wrote Scream. Wes Craven also wrote this movie. And as you well know, I really love Kevin Williamson's writing in Scream. I think it's one of the best scripts ever. I also think Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the best scripts ever, but it's for different reasons. So Scream has a dialogue that it knows what it is in terms of it wink wink to the audience and stuff. Whereas A Nightmare on Elm Street is just imaginative. Completely imaginative. Out there.
yeah, it's definitely creepy as well, especially the whole vulnerability of it getting you when you're asleep.
What do you think is better writing? A Nightmare on Elm Street or Scream? So I said dialogue and stuff for Scream, but imagination for A Nightmare on Elm Street. And this comes from me, the writer of the most imaginative, original, and going to be the greatest horror movie of the past 25 years, Heathen. My name is John Kane. So whatever I say about this goes.
It's hard to say because of the two, I prefer watching Scream. Scream is one of my all-time favourites, but that's not necessarily to say that it's the best of anything. It's just what I enjoy the most. So I'd have to think about it and try and look at it without my...
I think they're both as good as each other.
Yeah. Some of the...
But there's just something about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Writing in A Nightmare on Elm Street makes me really laugh, though. There's a particular line, especially that Johnny Depp delivers. And I just can't take it seriously.
Johnny Depp's first ever appearance in a movie as well, by the way.
Yeah, crazy.
His debut.
With his nice little crop top.
Yeah.
of the time.
And pretty much the whole reason he's in it is someone else was going for an audition for a movie, possibly even for a Nightmare on Elm Street, and he was just hanging around,
Yeah.
waiting for band practice or after band practice. And casting director or whatever saw him, made him audition, and then he was called back a few times, and they were about to make the decision. And Wes Craven and a few others had someone else in mind, but Wes Craven's young daughter was going through the headshot, says, "No, Daddy, it's this one. This is the guy." So it's because of Wes Craven's young daughter at the time that we have Johnny Depp in the role of Glenn, which is one of the best roles.
He is, I mean, he's a natural born performer, isn't he? He's brilliant, and he looks great on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing to fault with his performance.
I love the
but
character
the
of Glenn.
lines, "Ciao, ciao, ciao."
I was going to bring that up to you, but you got in there already.
That's the line I was talking about. That every time I just crack
Kitty,
up.
kitty.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
The introduction of all the characters, I think, is done quite well as well. You get a quick insight into who they all are.
The opening of the movie is a dream sequence, and it features Tina running down the school hallway, and the lockers on each side, and just this amazing lighting.
Yes,
When I say the opening, I don't mean the opening. I mean after we've seen the glove.
again, another
being made
reason
in the
why
opening
this one is
sequence.
obviously the top of the three without question. Not only is because it's the first one where they've come up with all the basic ideas, but the way that they shot all the sort of dream sequences versus real life time. This is obviously the template for how they continue, and it's done perfectly.
The way that they have
Interestingly.
the dream and the reality
Yeah.
just seamlessly melt together in terms of it doesn't break up the movie at all. The reason I bring it up is in the remake, it's like, oh, here's a scene of a dream, here's a scene in real life, and here's a kill. It was just so poorly done. Whereas this, with everything else included with the movie, it's all done to just to a fault. You can't really fault this movie.
And to this day, that Tina kill scene is
Pretty much
so
all of the kill
memorable.
scenes in this movie. So this is again going back to the writing. So every single murder scene that we get in this is unique, and not just the ones that end up in death, but it's other things like the glove in the tub, for instance. There are so many unique moments, but we get into Tina. You just started.
Yeah, Tina when she's in bed with her boyfriend, and I think the reason the deaths are so unique is because you can't see the perpetrator. Obviously, we can see what Freddy's doing to her because we can see her dream, and then we can see that correspond to what's happening in the room in the real life. But obviously, because you can't see Freddy in the real world, it's very possessed. She's being, dragged up the walls and the ceilings, and I have to say as well, the acting is great to sell it, because how else would you react? He's the boyfriend I'm talking about now. He's there seeing his girlfriend being slashed very gruesomely to death.
Yeah, her boyfriend,
And he
Tina's
can't
boyfriend
help
Rod,
her.
is in the bedroom with her. Yeah, played by Ju Garcia. Yeah.
And he can't do anything. And then on top of that, he's then obviously suspected of being her killer because there's no other sign, because Freddy doesn't exist in the real world. So
you brought up Tina's killing, where in her dream she's being chased by Freddy, and she's been through the boiler room, the whole shebang. She's
which
now,
is so cinematic as well.
Yeah.
Just mentioned the boiler room
which is the
with all the steam and
one
the
of the
red
openings.
lighting. Yeah.
and when Tina ends up, she's dreaming that she's at the house that they're actually in, and she's running down the alleyway, and Freddy gets the elongated arms. What do you think about the elongated arms?
I think it's pretty silly. I think it's pretty silly. Just reminds me of like Mr. Men, Mr. Tickle or something with his long arms.
Yeah, this movie is 40 years old now.
Yes.
You've got to imagine 1984, that's a pretty cool thing to see.
And again, I wanted to do this
unique
in
as well.
order, and I'll get to it when we do, but there is kind of a theme throughout all three of them, that there are Freddy incarnations or like mutations that are entertaining, but
You don't get it in this movie though. Freddy is just Freddy.
yeah, but even I just mean like the small things like his arms going out, but apart from that, he's definitely the most menacing in this.
Yeah, so she's being chased, and you get Long Freddy, and then you see Tina in bed having this nightmare, and also she's levitating off the bed essentially, and then going all up the wall, all up the ceiling, as she was being, manhandled by Freddy in the dream. And just you got to consider again, this is 40 years ago, so the way that they perfected doing that scene had like a rotating room. They had the camera attached to the wall all times.
It's done amazingly well.
It's seamless, isn't it? That is one of the best death scenes of all time. And when you see Freddy's glove scrape down her torso, and her skin splits open, that's ultra gruesome, that effect, and still to this day a very effective shot.
Well, it's terrifying because there's nothing you can do, as I mentioned already, and the people around you can't help either because, as we already said, the boyfriend is there and he can't help because there's no one to tackle or to talk to. Even if it was like the Invisible Man, you could still take him down. But with this, there's literally zero you can do except for he's not aware, but I guess wake them up.
We'll stick with Tina somewhat, but we haven't introduced the main character, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp. And I said we're sticking with Tina, so there's a scene where Heather Langenkamp's character, Nancy, is fallen asleep in school. This is after Nancy's death. And Nancy turns up.
After Nancy's death?
Oh, did I say Nancy? Yeah. So after Tina's death.
Yeah.
So Nancy's having a nightmare at school, and she dreams of Tina in the doorway of the classroom. She's wearing a body bag, and she's like suffocated and dead under this thing. And Nancy goes and follows her, and her body bag's being dragged through the hallway of the school with this great, kind of whispery dialogue in the background.
And that imagery has been copied a lot since then.
And again, it's what I say. So it's not. They haven't just ended Tina's great legacy in horror at her death. It's also just carried on after. So she's dead now, and we still have another amazing scene with great imagery. And then when we get a scene where we see Tina close up in the body bag and her face revealed, and a centipede comes out of her ghostly white face, just chilling.
Yeah, I think they also nailed the effects best in the very first film, which you would always assume like they should be getting better.
Well, they're much more elaborate the more you go on, though, aren't they?
Yeah, but as we'll get to it, there are some things I could definitely comment on which are just so lazy. Doesn't really take away from it though, because the films are silly enough, I think. But yeah, the first one is still chilling.
We've barely even getting into this movie. We've skipped another iconic moment. So we've gone through Tina's death, and Tina at this point is having a sleepover with Nancy, Glenn, Rod. And before we get to her demise, there's a scene obviously with Nancy sleeping in bed, and Freddy comes through the wall, his face and his hands like stretch the wall out and over Heather Langenkamp while she's laying in bed.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say to that, because I thought you were going to mention something else, which is all I can think of now, which is not at all a brilliant special effect or a Freddy moment. It's purely the moment when one of their mums calls up, and Glenn is on the phone, like trying to say that I think he's supposed to be out of town with a friend or something. And
so when the sleepover's beginning,
Yeah.
so we just have like the exterior shot of the house where they're all going to be sleeping over in. And yeah, it goes inside, and the two girls, Tina and Nancy, are sitting on the couch, and you've got Johnny Depp sitting at the table, and he has to ring his mum to like give some BS story as to his whereabouts. So he's bought his pre-recording on a tape, and he's got his ghetto blaster next to him.
Background noise, and
yeah, it's like plane shooting stuff, isn't it?
Quickly deteriorates into sirens and bombs or gunshots.
It sounds like a street shootout.
And he has to try and get
gang
his mum
warfare.
off the phone and be like, "Oh, sorry, I think it's just a TV."
His mum's like, "What's going on there? Where are you?" He's like, "Oh, nothing, Mum. Just."
That was a moment I always remembered from the very first watch. That and Chow Chow Chow.
I love that when he hangs up on his mum, the way that Johnny Depp just puts his head in his hands, like, oh, we completely messed up here.
Yeah, terrible.
And the two girls laughing at him.
And I'm pretty sure he lives opposite as well. So it's like...
And then not long after that, we get the infamous Chow 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 moment.
Yeah.
And then Rod comes out of nowhere, bad boy Rod. Yeah. And he's like, "Hey, what's going on here? An orgy or something?" I love Rod.
I found it quite hard to decipher what age everyone was supposed to be in all three of the films.
Well, they're high school students, so I suppose they're supposed to be about 17 in the original.
Yeah, I guess that kind of fits. But I was also really wanted to mention that Heather Langenkamp is
Superb.
one of my favourite leading ladies in horror, but also just in general. I think she's just got such a likeable quality, and she does the role so well. You're definitely on her side. Or at least I am. And of course, Robert Englund. I'm so glad that he reprised the role in all of them, because you can't change him up. He's got too much of a personality, and even the way he looks, I'm assuming, would be completely different if someone else played it, which would be a shame.
Yeah, we haven't started talking about it yet, but because you brought it up, in number 2, the studio just hired a stuntman to play Freddy because they wouldn't meet Robert Englund's, asking price. And after about 3 weeks of shooting, they realised that they made a huge mistake and fired the stuntman guy who was playing Freddy and brought back Robert Englund at his asking price. And yeah, the rest is history, obviously. But just goes to show, we brought up a few executive dumbass moves on this, and that is definitely one of them, isn't it?
When we get to there and I explain the things, like, I think Robert Englund being Freddy in the second one is pretty much the saving grace of that film for me. So thank God they finally made the right decision there.
Mention it briefly. What do you make of the glove in the tub scene? Again, just another iconic moment in horror history, in cinema history. There are so many of these. So we've gone through Freddy coming through the wall, Tina's death in general. Now we've got this.
Yeah, it would even make a great, poster art or something. The only thing is that you've got a sort of young girl supposed to be nude in a tub, so that's maybe a bit too X-rated for a movie like this. I don't know. But I think that's an interesting aspect of that kill, is that she's so vulnerable in that moment, and it's really creepy and disturbing, and especially when you know a bit about Freddy's real life background.
It's been reimagined a few times as well, even though really this isn't the first time we saw something like this. It was in David Cronenberg's Shivers, where there's a girl in the tub and these little parasite worm things start swimming towards her, so this is a play on that. But this is definitely the most iconic bath horror scene, I think.
Yeah.
And notice I said bath, not shower, because shower is psycho. This is bath. Bath and shower is different.
They are different.
Yeah.
They're very different. And also, I think that's one of the ones where you're not entirely sure if she's fallen asleep or not, because sometimes it's quite clear when they're in the boiler room, for example, but other times they blur the lines, like you said earlier, between reality and dreams, so you're kind of taken by surprise.
Do you remember how Glenn dies, Johnny Depp's character? They're trying to stay awake. Nancy is pleading with him that he's got to stay awake because she's, she needs to sleep to go and get Freddy. But he's on his bed. He's got his massive TV resting on his crotch. Mm-hmm. He's watching something, and he obviously falls asleep. And then his entire being and the bed sheets, everything gets sucked into the mattress and below, and they're all gone. And all of a sudden, this spiral of blood, this tornado of blood, this eruption comes from below, and the blood just goes everywhere.
I wonder how many gallons of it were used.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read at one point how much blood they would have used.
Because between that and the
a crazy amount.
Tina death scene, I mean, the amount of blood that went into this production would be crazy.
I just love how they just didn't hold back on any of that, and it completely works within the framing of the movie anyway.
Yeah.
Because you can go anywhere. A guy that is haunting you in your dreams because your parents murdered your or avenged the crimes that were committed against their children and got rid of you, and now you're back to take their offspring away. I've gone through a lot of stand-up moments, iconic imagery in horror. Let me just run through some of the others. So back to Nancy. Hello, I'm Nancy. Nancy from A Nightmare on Elm Street. So Nancy, her nightmare in school, and in her nightmare she's coming through the hallway, and you get the no running in the hallway, and there's the hallway monitor with the glove wearing the Freddy shirt, and the whole Rod is obviously suspected of the murder of Tina, and then he's put in jail, and he has a great scene where Nancy comes and sees him, and she leaves, and we see him sleeping, and like his bed sheets are coming alive, and makes him look like he's hung himself.
Yeah.
In the jail, which is that whole jail sequence. What we've been looking for a very particular jail cell for a scene in Heathen, and this is the kind of one that I need.
It must be an American thing to have this holding cell with an open setup, because I can't seem to find it in England.
Yeah, because I think the other movie we saw, it was Friday the 13th Part 6 or something like that. Yeah, there was another holding cell. We need a holding cell like that with the bars.
Yeah, if you're the proprietor of a disused prison with a holding cell in an open space, then hit us up.
Yes, that's Glen Oft, and yeah, I'm not sure, because we obviously could have gotten into the story, but everyone that will watch us will know the story. It's just I haven't mentioned the very opening sequence of the construction of the glove, just brilliantly done, where he's sharpening the knives,
again,
rubbing it down, trying it on,
yeah.
all that stuff. And they mimic that in the opening of number 3, where Kirsten, Patricia Arquette's character, is putting together like a newspaper clippings, and she has the homemade glue or something like this. Yeah,
she's putting together the house and paper mache and roof.
Not quite as iconic as the first one, but still they've done something there. They've done something there.
Yeah, and that obviously ties in with it being the first film of the 3. We can talk about now how brilliant the backstory of the bad guys.
What about the phone tongue? Remember Nancy's on the phone and the tongue comes out the other end. Gives her a lick.
The Freddy tongue.
There's a lot of tongue stuff in the Freddy series, isn't there? Yeah.
They definitely embraced that one, and it's just as gross every single time, and just as unrealistic looking. But yeah, still disgusting.
So you've seen where the series went from the next movie onwards. You haven't. I don't think you've seen 4, 5, 6. You've seen number 7, which is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And that was pretty much his idea. If it wasn't for number 2, it was certainly for number 3 when they brought him back to write some of it. But after the success of Nightmare on Elm Street, New Line Cinema, Bob Shaye, New Line, the house that Freddy built, and that you should be forever grateful for, Karen, because it produced your favourite of all time, Lord of the Rings. That's all down to Freddy Krueger money. No, you saw where it become. You saw what the series became from number 2 onwards. And as it goes, Wes Craven had an idea for number 2, and of course the studio were like, no, we need to capitalise on this now, your idea is going to take too long, we need to get a sequel out ASAP, and they ended up with what they ended up with for number 2, and there's not really much else really need to say about the original.
Well, that was a great segue into number 2, so let's take that on now.
It's unmatched, I would say, in a lot of ways, and it's a lot of it is also directly responsible for some kind of imagery ideas and things like this, and just dream sequence ideas that I have. Well, not ideas, dream sequences I've put to paper now for Heathen has directly come from this. And
it's really nicely shot.
Oh, it's beautifully shot. That's why I can fall asleep to it as well. It's like a giant warm hug to me, this movie.
Such a weirdo.
As are many others. And I will probably come back to Nightmare later on in the episode, but yeah, like I say, it was a great segue. I've ruined it. Let's get into Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, not directed or written by Wes Craven.
And my goodness, can you tell?
Technically, we are starting this like it is the first time you've seen it, because you don't recall seeing it before.
I have zero recollection of it, which is crazy, because now I don't see how I could possibly forget it.
It is an unforgettable experience, yeah.
The choices, first of all, are just so bizarre. I don't see how you go from the first one and then you're like, what should we do with Freddy from here?
What do you make of the fact that people made the decision that this was an acceptable follow-up to what had just come months before?
Or doesn't it just confirm
Not
everything
years,
we
months.
know about the people making a lot of these decisions? It's just...
I understand you've got to make
choice.
money, But it probably would have paid just to have Wes Craven give him 6 weeks to finalise the script and go with his ideas. Did you enjoy it?
It was such a confusing mishmash to me. I did quite enjoy watching it.
And that's the thing. See, we're going to end up kind of slating this movie, and I'm also going to slate a lot of number 3. But I just like them. There's just something about it. It's probably a lot to do with it. It's to do with Freddy, obviously.
Of the 3, the second one was definitely the one that had the most laugh out loud. I mean, the faces I was pulling during number 2 were ones that I normally pull for like 50 grand 2-week shoot movies. So
here's my Amazon delivery. Let me just get the door. My whiskey.
The first thing that stuck out to me was an instant slap in the face. The hair and costumes and just the look throughout this whole thing was insane. Surely
of the
no
main
one
cast,
actually
you mean?
looked like that. Well, just
So
everyone.
like Jesse and Lisa.
Just there were a few exceptions where people looked okay, but in general, I also couldn't tell if it's the main guy called Jesse, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell half the time if he was supposed to be in regular clothes or his pajamas, and then at one point it looked like he was wearing some kind of top from a mental asylum or something, and he was just hanging about at home. The hair of the sort of background artists, mostly the girls, but there were a few terrible mullets on the men as well. I mean, the whole thing, I was just constantly shocked at how terrible it looked.
It's representative of its time, I think.
And surely it's an over-the-top version.
The film certainly looks older than the first one. In certain respects, it's 1985, so like I say, months after the original.
And Jesse is the lead guy.
Before we get into Jesse and everybody else, the opening of the movie is Jesse getting onto the school bus.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the school bus coming towards the camera as the opening, which I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, they're all on the bus, and a bunch of kids go off at a certain stop, and Jesse's then caught on the bus with a couple of others. And it goes, the bus goes careening at speed towards what looks like a canyon, and ends up falling into the depths of hell, and it's hanging or balancing on two stone columns coming up from hell. And at that point, you mentioned when this part was over that this was like a recurring dream that you have.
Yeah, I used to have all the time as a kid.
Up to what point? Like the hell bit and...
Just, so my dream would always be that there was sort of lava, just endless lava at the bottom, which is what the hell was in this case. And then exactly those kind of stone pillar things that were also crumbling in my dream. And I was either on top of a crumbling one or hanging off the edge by a thread. And my dream would always end with me actually falling into the lava and still being conscious of like burning alive for a few seconds before I woke up.
So what do you think that represents?
I don't know.
Have you not thought about it?
Probably looked it up once.
When's the last time you had this dream?
Years ago now.
Turned into a therapy session.
A lot younger, but I just couldn't believe how exactly it looked like my dreams. Take away the school bus. No. I was like, that's exactly what my nightmares looked like.
So I thought the opening was pretty cool, effects-wise and stuff like this. But hearing that was your own personal nightmare, took it to a whole other level for me.
You loved that.
Yeah.
I also think at this point I was still buying it as a, somewhat like serious on the same level as the first one. And they had me thinking this for a fair bit of the beginning of the film. I think really what ultimately broke that spell of are they taking themselves seriously was the Breakfast Club-esque dance scene.
Again, we'll get... You've just kind of skimmed it. They've just thrown away all of the rules of the first one. So Freddy is someone that haunts you in your dreams and your nightmares. In this one, he's just possessing and stalking someone in their real life. And yeah, possessing people. So it's
weird.
There aren't... I think there was possibly one faux dream sequence in this movie. The rest of it is just played straight out in real life. And it's just weird.
I couldn't tell. See, I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a dream or not because I thought he was kind of dreaming and then his body's being taken over and he'd wake up having perpetrated the crime or whatever. But like you said, they didn't follow any of the
it just takes
rules
liberties.
set out in the first one. And it didn't help. It didn't make it... It made it a lot less scary as well because your main guy isn't really in mortal danger, you quickly realise. And he's just being possessed and trying not to kill the people around him.
Yeah.
But
Our main guy, Jesse's not in mortal danger, but... Oh, Jesse. This character has to be the most standout character in all of horror history. What the hell is going on? What was written for this guy? What was written in general in this movie? Let's get into the homosexual overtones.
I was too distracted by his performance. The guy who plays Jesse, he had these like character traits that you kept seeing throughout the film, and again I was just like, I think it was one of like you always do this thing that like his head.
I saw you reacting to his busy head.
He had just certain little traits which was so.
Let's get into the dance.
Not entertaining. Yeah, the dance. You saw my face change for the entirety of that thing. I was in shock, utter, complete shock that scene was in a Freddy movie.
Not just a Freddy movie, the one that has come directly after Wes Craven's original. And we got a guy, butt pounding his drawer shut.
He's cleaning his room to some girly music and doing some, like I said, it's like Breakfast Club or some sort of rom-com from the 80s. It was so out of place. So out of place. And then, of course, his, love interest shows up at the end of it, and it's supposed to be some funny, awkward moment because he was, like, air humping or something at the moment she entered the room.
Yeah, something in his hands, like a tennis racket, and he's extending it out from between his legs.
I couldn't tell who this character was supposed to be. I thought at first he was supposed to be the nerdy guy. And then... I don't know, he seems to be friends but not friends with this other guy that is at school, and just everything was quite confusing, I found. I don't know what they were deciding behind the scenes.
Staying with the dance, or not so much the dance, but with Jesse.
Mm.
So we've gone through the dance, butt bumping the drawer, stuff like this. And there's parts of the movie where he's on the baseball field at school with Gray or whatever his name is, and they allude to their coach being into S&M, hardcore S&M, and hanging out at what they call weird bars or whatever. Jesse finds himself at this place. It's called Don's Place, this hardcore S&M bar. And there's a scene where Jesse goes into the bar and he walks up and orders a drink, and out from the crowd comes Coach Schneider, who doesn't like him already because he's been making him do push-ups and all this kind of stuff beforehand. And then Coach Schneider decides to leave the club with Jesse, take him back to school, make him do laps, and then take a shower. And what happens from there?
Well, I can't even finish that yet. I have to mention something that brings up, which is I thought the whole time I was sat there trying to decipher if this was a dream sequence or
it's real.
And if it's real... Why was he in an S&M gay bar thing? Why did he go with his coach and actually do laps and shit when his coach is in some like gimp outfit? And then,
to be fair, hadn't he changed out of the gimp outfit for the laps?
No, he was in the gimp outfit the whole time. And then you see him put down some skipping ropes really intentionally, and I feel like it was really strongly insinuating that Jesse was about to be attacked by this pervert coach.
Coach Schneider was going to have his way with Jesse, is what you think it's in. Yeah, I got those kind of overtones as well.
Which is the most disturbing part of the film. But then, before he can do that, as Jesse's having his shower...
He gets attacked by a bunch of baseballs and basketballs and tennis balls.
And might I add... Whilst he's being attacked by flying paraphernalia from all over the room,
he
doesn't stop chewing gum the whole time.
Basketball flies out. Tennis ball flies out.
It was so bizarre. He's remaining very calm. Again, I was like, this surely is a dream sequence because no one's going to react to something like this.
The attack of the sports balls was not an effective scene for horror.
No, it seemed like they were going for comedy, but it wasn't very funny.
But yeah, Jesse's still showering at this point. And then,
so
then the ropes come out.
That we saw him place, I think, for Jesse. then tie themselves around his wrists and stuff. And he's just dragged into the shower room by an unseen force, Freddy, I guess.
Tied up.
Tied up to the, like, piping in the showers.
Stripped naked.
And then Freddy, the invisible Freddy, goes to get a towel. And he does that whole thing on the coach's butt, like, multiple times.
He spanks the coach's butt.
And you can see, like, this is a really rough play because you can see the, like, red marks as if this is some kind of leather strap or something. Again, what tone are they going for? Is this scary movie or is this horror movie?
Did you like it?
I was dumbfounded, and as I said it earlier on, this movie did entertain me.
All it is Freddy Krueger as an invisible force getting some rope, tying up a coach, stripping him naked, twirling up a towel and whipping his ass till he dies.
Stripped, obviously before the spanking to get full effect. Wow, that was weird. And then, of course...
This is the first time that Jesse is fully taken over by Freddy, because Jesse ends up, after the coach is whipped to death, it then goes to a shot of Jesse, who's now not Freddy anymore, standing in a shower, and he looks at his hand, adorned with the Freddy glove, and he does his classic, "Ah!" How many times in this movie does Jesse scream like a girl?
I literally wrote down, I was like, girly screams. But again, I was like, are they trying to make this comedic? Like, surely they're trying to make it funny.
It's essentially how we're introduced to Jesse, because his family are having breakfast and the camera's down in the kitchen, and all of a sudden, we hear this high-pitched scream.
Screaming, and it turns out it's Jesse, who's a guy.
It reminds me of when Homer Simpson thinks that someone's being murdered in the Flanders household. No, but it's just Ned screaming at his new net curtains.
Yeah, there was so much I couldn't take seriously. Oh, and also, another thing that baffled me, the killer budgie.
I'm about to get before we get into Killer Budgie, when Jesse goes into the S&M Club, by the way, which was mentioned to you, that the person that leans into camera from behind the bar and gives him his drink is the one and only Bob Shay.
Okay.
So Bob Shay insisted that he dresses up as an S&M slave. Apparently, he wanted another role. I think he wanted to play the coach, and he was kind of talked out of that by the director, Jack Shoulder. But yeah, he wanted... Why do you want this role? Why did you even put yourself in the...
He really just wanted to see what he looks like in leather.
This is the kind of filmmaker I want to be. A guy that will wear an S&M outfit to get it done.
Jesse was never ID'd, which I was like, that's weird. He's a bit young, isn't he?
Yeah, so we kind of gone into... This movie's kind of confusing because it's no longer based in the dream world. We've got Freddy just possessing Jesse to kill people.
Well, it's confusing me because I still thought a lot of it was supposed to be in dream world.
Yeah, and as well you might, because why wouldn't you after seeing the first one? But no, it's not. And you've gone through that whole towel scene and the invisible force. You said and I quote, "I think that was Freddy." Let's now get into the budgie, the killer budgie in Jesse's household. And by the way, before we get the budgie scene, Jesse's family is sitting around in the front room, like reading the paper, knitting or whatever. And the dad's like, "Oh my, it's hot in here." And the wife is like, "Yes, it is rather balmy in here." And then Jesse walks in, he's out of frame, and walks into frame, and he's like, "Is it just me or is it hot in here?" Everyone's just saying the same thing. And it's alluding to Freddy Krueger, killer with a razor glove, is now resorted to just turning up the heat in the household to, displeasure his victims.
The heat was a sign of Freddy in this one more so than...
I
guess they replaced the dreams with heat.
It was not cool. And then we get the budgie straight after this. This is pretty much in the same scene. This family have a budgie, and when the house is getting too hot, they cover the budgie cage with a towel.
It's so that they go to sleep, Johnny.
Yeah. I used to have a budgie, I know this.
A curtain.
And then they hear a commotion in the budgie.
A commotion in the budgie.
A commotion in the budgie cage.
It's all shaking, and it seems like it's so 80s effects to me. It was so unrealistic. So I had no idea what was supposed to be happening under the curtain.
So anyway, this budgie comes out of the cage and just starts flying at people.
Yeah, but first he killed the other budgie in the cage. That was what all the rattling was. He's a murderous budgie, and now he's come out to attack the people.
But it only occurred to me yesterday, the question, is this Freddy possessing a budgie? Was that supposed to be Freddy?
I think it was.
That was the first time it really hit me. Before it was just a stupid scene. I was like, why the hell is there a budgie attacking people? And it was the same thing when I thought when Jesse's sleeping in school and a snake goes around his neck. It's just not. It's not a Nightmare on Elm Street thing. So the budgie thing was even worse. And it only hit me yesterday. Yeah, is that supposed to be Freddy the budgie?
Well, me thinking that I feel like I watched yesterday for the first time, I can confirm that to me was supposed to be Freddy taking over a budgie, killing the other budgie, and then flying around in this tiny little feathery body and trying to attack the people. And also the reactions of the humans. I mean, my God, it's a little budgie, and they were all acting like it was some massive fanged eagle thing coming at them.
It ends up bursting into flames, doesn't it?
Again, what the hell?
And then it cuts to the dad in the kitchen, and he says something along the lines of, "Animals just don't explode into flame for no reason."
But yeah, that was completely another thing, because they're fighting it off at first, and I thought, well, they'll kill it because it's a little budgie. And then it burst into flames, and I was like, this is probably even dumber to end it like that after Freddy's taken it over, which shouldn't have happened in the first place. It's a budgie! It's a budgie!
Jesse's not best mate, Grady, also when he has a sleepover, and this is after Jesse has just been propositioned by Lisa, and he just doesn't go through with it because he has another freak out because of Freddy. So he goes to Grady's house for a sleepover, and so with the homosexual overtone in this movie, we then have him like rejecting the girl, going to Grady's, and Freddy turns up because they're sleeping, and well, they don't even get to sleep. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna go to bed now. And as soon as
Jesse falls asleep.
As soon as they put the light out, he's like asleep straight away. And he's like, no, it's happening again. And he starts like sweating and trembling, and we get Freddy emerging from his body. It's almost like a coming out of the closet metaphor or something, which is reversed at the end when Freddy is burnt, and then Jesse emerges from the bizarre Freddy body.
Yeah, but that bit was from a dream. I swear.
I don't think he was. I don't know. Well, we saw him he was not on the sofa. He was on this tiny chair, sleeping across it, and we don't actually see him fall asleep as far as I remember. He's waking up Grady, so it's happening again. So he's aware that it's happening to him.
I'm pretty sure he was asleep, and the other guy was supposed to stay awake, and he was like falling asleep in front of the TV or whatever. But then this goes
back into the confusing nature of the whole thing.
Exactly. But then the thing that makes it seem like not a dream was the fact that his parents ended up being there. Although they took bloody ages. He was screaming and knocking on his door for help for such a long time before his parents showed up. So again, it made me think it must be a dream. Yeah.
I've read that Robert Englund really struggled with the pool party massacre scene, because here he is just in the real life of the teens, and he said he didn't know how to bring Freddy to life as well in that environment as what he'd done in the dream world.
Well, again, I noticed what he was doing, and you see it a lot in this film with the way that he's been brought out. He's, knocking things over, he's chucking stuff, and God bless him, Robert Englund, like, there's not much he can do, because what I imagine Freddy would really do if put in that situation is start slicing and slashing everyone to bits. But I guess they didn't have the budget or the inclination to do that. So then Robert Englund is just there with his claw hand, being like, well, I can't hurt any of the extras, so I guess I'll just chuck some furniture around. But it looks dumb, it looks so dumb. And like, why isn't he attacking anyone? And why is he in the real world?
And then you get the guy from the crowd, teen crowd, the classic guy who comes out, hey, it's okay, man. We're not gonna hurt you. Just tell us what to do, and we'll facilitate you. And Freddy just gives him a one-liner and slashes him to death, which he fully deserves for doing that. So there are no real dream sequences in the movie. Robert Englund has said this is his least favourite of the entire series. This is what they deemed acceptable to the follow-up to the first one. It has absolutely terrible dialogue. Just others, bad story, bad continuation. But again, I don't hate it.
No, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd watch it again and again and again.
Maybe if I watch it again and again and again, I'll understand which bits are supposed to be dream sequence and which bits are not, and other incongruous moments.
Yeah, when we get towards the end of the movie as well, and I think Freddy's dead, we even get dialogue like, I can't believe it's actually all over. it's just like so on the nose.
And again, another weird thing,
Dialogue for dummies.
like Freddy taking over a budgie, was at the end when Freddy and the girl, the love interest, are in the boiler thing, the boiler area, or whatever.
Yeah, the boiler room.
The boiler room. And it's so strange because she's obviously trying to bring Jesse out in him and suppress Freddy that way. But it kind of ends up that Freddy's like crumbled down in the corner of this walkway in the boiler room, and then he brings on fire.
Yeah.
And
It was like spontaneous combustion.
Burns himself to death. I realised that. I was like, well, he's the one who's brought the flames on and he's burning to death. Why has he killed himself? And it's only so that Jesse in the film can then rip apart Freddy Krueger's charred remains and come out of him to see his love interest. But why would Freddy kill himself?
So many unanswered questions.
Yeah, we need to watch it again.
When you say about his love interest, Lisa, Jesse and Lisa, it was just obvious to me that this was a gay character. Even the first time I saw it, I was like, Jesse is a gay character. So the whole love interest of him and her being in love with him.
I haven't noticed any of the supposed gay overtones.
What about just him screaming like a...
It doesn't have to be anything to do with sexuality. That just makes him...
Come on, enough of this new age bullshit, alright? Let's call a spade a
No,
spade.
I'm just saying, I genuinely didn't... If you hadn't said that people say that about this film, I wouldn't have noticed it, that's all. Apart from the obvious, freak coach, S&M guy.
The guy that plays Jesse is a homosexual man, Mike Patton, and also on all the documentaries that I've seen and stuff like this, he seems like a super cool guy. And this is his crowning moment in cinema history. And even though we said how silly it is, it's nothing to do with him or even the character. Just the fact that it's in the follow up to Freddy Krueger as to why it's so damn stupid. I mean, the dance is still stupid. It's almost like, I don't know if they're going to like a risky business
that wasn't his
kind of
choice,
thing there.
I'm sure.
There's kind of like contradicting
that.
stories. I think at one point he said that he had no idea what he's doing, so he just made it up on the spot. And another time he said that, yeah, actually, I pre-rehearsed all of that and everything you get there was me premeditated. But either way, it doesn't really matter. It's a stand-up performance for certain reasons, and he also considers himself like the first male scream queen because he's one of the first male,
Screamers?
Well, he's also one of the, it's mostly always a girl being attacked, being the lead in a horror movie. It's kind of rare when it's a dude. It's actually a dude in Heathen. So it's kind of unique in that way. He's certainly memorable for everything that he has to do.
It was
and
a lot
say.
of fun to watch.
It was fun to watch, and I
I
enjoyed watching him as well.
I was so shocked at where they went with it, but there was the least amount of real fear from this one of all three.
Yeah, and that's a good place to get into number 3 when you talk about real fear. So, number 3, Dream Warriors. You seem to be slightly surprised when I said to you that this is highly regarded in the series.
The second one?
No, the third one. This one.
Oh,
Dream
I thought
Warriors.
you were talking about the second one being highly regarded, because I was like, how can anyone highly regard that?
To be fair, you could have always had that reaction to number 3.
Well, I prefer number 3 by quite a big distance. So
Let's hear why then.
Well, first of all, Heather's back, which I think was great.
That's enough, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and they went back to sort of the original rules of Freddy.
And because Doken's on the soundtrack.
And
Is that Doken?
and it's, of course, yeah, it's got its super silly elements, the kids having like superpowers in their dreams, but I still feel like it went so much more, it ties in. You could have cut the second one out and just see number 1 and number 3 and it would be better.
It was so refreshing after watching number 2 and number 3 immediately after to see a dream sequence. And quite early on, it's like now we're back into what this world is supposed to be, and was sorely lacking from the second one.
Yeah, and I think as well the change up, because essentially it's the same thing that's happening. It's another group of kids whose parents were the ones who murdered Fred Krueger.
These are the leftover kids who haven't been gotten in the first
from
one.
a slightly different generation, I guess.
Yeah.
But rather than have the exact same thing happen again, where these kids are kind of dealing with it alone in their, you know, suburban neighborhoods and going to school at the same time and just helping each other. In this one, I thought it was an interesting twist that they've kind of sectioned all of the kids for having some kind of shared psychosis, because they know that they're having the same sort of theme through their nightmares, and they think, well, let's study these kids and make them realise that it's all in their head.
Yeah, we get to the, what do you call it? Not an asylum.
The institution.
The institution. And Patricia Arquette, the lead in this movie, plays Kirsten. It opens with her dream sequence, pretty much, where she's in bed, and when she's going to sleep, she has this model of a house in her bedroom, which is supposed to be, I think it's 1428 Elm Street.
It is supposed to
Yeah.
be.
I'm more questioning the numbers than the fact that it's supposed to be the house. And she falls asleep, and when she is in her nightmare, she's outside the house. In real life, it's all dilapidated, and you get the classic little girls with the skipping rope singing the Freddy nursery rhyme. And
I love the way that was shot.
Yeah, that's the whole reason.
It brought you right back to the first film.
And it's so. That's the whole reason. It's completely effective, and more so because of what we got in the second one, a complete lack of this. And they didn't skimp with it once she gets into the house. The production design is off the scale, and we get like the original Billy the Puppet from Saw. There's a little girl comes out of nowhere on a tricycle and comes up to Kirsten and starts saying all this spooky stuff to her, like, this is where Freddy keeps us.
Yeah. It's showing more of that despicable backstory of Freddy. Although I also think it was quite bizarre in this one, though, that even though they showed more of his horrendous sort of crimes, it also tried to insinuate that he didn't deserve what he got, which I disagree with.
Yeah, because there are too many, there are always different people writing and directing these things from the second one onwards. You just don't get any continuity. So it's a kind of whatever. I think, well, not, I don't think, I know by the time the third one came out, it was directly, aimed at kids. The fact that he even had like Dokken on the soundtrack, trying to make it like ultra commercial, like, here's Dokken, it's the same thing as having Guns N' Roses, just not as good. Do your soundtrack, and then that's when you start getting all pajamas and stuff like this. So that's why it has still kind of strange tone with having kids in it.
Kids who are smoking or asking for their smoking allowance, which she's only being denied not because of her age, but because she's burning herself.
Jennifer, yeah.
But again, I was like, well, how old do you have to be to smoke? They seemed quite young to be just legally smoking.
They're locked up. Maybe I'll just cut them some slack and let them smoke.
I really highly doubt that. I highly doubt that you get...
This is how these institutions are. Smoking is just a free-for-all.
Oh, dear.
Mention a little bit how... So Heather Langenkamp is back. John Saxon, who plays her dad, Lieutenant, is also in this one, but he's like a washed-up alcoholic now because he can't deal with what's happened in the first one and previously. So we've got comebacks like that, and we've also got Wes Craven coming back to write some of this, but it's kind of false because Wes Craven's, everything that he'd written, they say that about 75% of it was like scrapped and completely changed. So one of the only things that remained was Nancy dying and then coming back with Freddy's glove and killing him. I'm not sure how much else. And they brought him on as executive producer as well. But he also said that, right, when I was brought on as exec producer, I'll be involved with casting, I'll be involved with certain story elements, all this kind of stuff. I'm already the writer of this thing with a couple of other people. But instead, they gave him the exec producer credit, and he said they never contacted him again. So they scrapped his story for the most part, and just didn't come to him for anything else. So we don't know what... So we end up getting Frank Darabont, who has done stuff like The Walking Dead. He's an Oscar-nominated writer. I think he might be the Shawshank Redemption guy. I have to double-check that. So big deal. And also Chuck Russell, the guy in that directing it, also wrote this. But they scaled it completely back, because apparently what Wes Craven had written with someone else would have cost about $20 million, and this movie ended up costing like 2 or whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5, so quite small. So they really scaled it back, and yeah, I don't know what. I think actually no, this was the one where Wes Craven's idea was that what happened in number 7, New Nightmare, where he was going to have Freddy Krueger haunt the people that made the movie in real life, and they rejected that and went this way.
I think the idea itself was a good enough premise.
It's not a bad idea
film.
for a movie,
And the
to
setting
have.
was good, and
Yeah, I like. So I was going to ask you, what do you think of the, the kind of medical setup of the whole thing?
whereas I normally would hate it for most genres of film, I think in horror, obviously, it has a great effect.
Yeah, the other time I love it is in Halloween 2, and yeah, these are 2 standout ones for kind of psychiatric wards, hospitals, for me, and probably a good money saver, cutting back on Wes Craven's £20 million budget.
Sense, doesn't it?
And yeah, so Kristen's character, she is haunted by Freddy in the opening dream sequence, and then we see her in real life. She goes to her bathroom mirror, and looking back at her is Freddy, and the mirror kind of breaks apart, and Freddy swipes through it, slashes her wrist, and then her mum breaks into the bathroom and just sees Kristen standing there with the mirror and, well, no Freddy in the mirror at least, but her wrist is obviously still slit. So her mother thinks that she tried to kill herself, so then she takes her, puts her into the psychiatric ward, and that's where she meets the other main characters of the movie, the other kids that have been dreaming of and having nightmares of Freddy and are committed. And in their group sessions, they have a doctor, I've forgotten his name, but they're bringing in a specialist, and it turns out that it is Nancy Heather Langenkamp, and because she's been through it all before, she's the one that believes them and gets them to do kind of alternative medicines and things like this, which doesn't go down well with like the matron of the hospital, who distrusts all of these new wave medicines and things that help these kids that are having trouble, don't want to sleep for obvious reasons. And when we're in the asylum, when we get the killings, this is what's really good about the movie. So again, I think it's just not comparable to the first one whatsoever on any real level. But what you start getting from number 3 onwards is the ultra imagination of Freddy's killings. And my favourite one in this, without a doubt, is when I think the character's name is Phil, and he's sleeping in his room, and Freddy takes out his veins and makes him walk around as like a puppet on strings, and he's using his veins as his strings to hold up his hands and move his...
I loved that bit, but even leading up to that, I loved when Freddy took over one of the hanging, string puppets on the wall to go to the bed and get him.
The mini Freddy that is
that
animated
so cool,
is
the
unbelievable.
Stop motion. I love that, and as you said, then turns that character into I think they're called marionette dolls.
Yeah, marionette.
And but the only other thing that bugged me with that scene was his roommate is an asshole. I mean, he knows...
What one was his roommate? Was it Kincaid?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
He
one
knows,
who's strong in his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was an
knows-
arse.
He was. Can I finish? He knows that
I'm agreeing with
Freddy is taking over and stuff, and that's why this other guy's sleepwalking. He knows that they're all sharing these dreams, and Freddy is dangerous. And he barely tries to wake him up. And of course, next thing you know, like, he's dead. And I was like, well, Kincaid could have so easily just slapped him to wake or something, but he just couldn't be bothered. And then he says as well, in group, when they're supposed to be talking about the loss, it's like, oh, he was just weak, that's why he died. I was like, God.
Yeah, I did not care for Kincaid.
No, but then they try to turn him round later when they're all...
It's too late.
Yeah, exactly. I thought, no, he's just an arsehole.
Yeah, and he gets to survive. He gets to survive as well.
Like I said, they tried to turn it around.
He dies early in the next one, so that's cool.
The only thing that let this premise down for me as well, in the main part, was I liked all the build-up until they had these special powers.
The kids have their special powers in the
dream.
dreams. Yeah, so Kristen, she's like acrobatic. She can do flips and things like this. Then you've got the other girl character who says, "I'm beautiful and bad," whatever the hell that's supposed to be.
And you already mentioned Kincaid's got super strength.
Yeah, super strength. And then you've got Wizard Boy. which
Dungeons and Dragons
might as well have
wizard.
been Harry Potter. And after watching, as a youngster, after watching the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I didn't think that just 2 sequels later I'd be seeing Freddy Krueger battling a child wizard. Because for me personally, when a wizard shows up, the fear is gone. The fear is completely gone.
This is what kind of takes down the level of this film for me, was if they'd gone with the premise of, I liked the main girl being able to call others into her dream, and I don't think it was a bad idea to have them as coming in together to try and fight him. I thought that was all good, but once they introduced these magical superpowers, it made it into such a sort of kiddie film. Really, really took down the...
Yeah, that was the big problem for me, is that the tone is just all over the place in this. Well, it's not all over, it's 50-50. It's half horror and just, half children
But if they'd just
fantasy.
taken that out, if they'd just been regular in their dreams and the only special trait was that the main girl could pull other people in.
Won't surprise you to know that Wes Craven's treatment for his idea for the second one was obviously much darker and had none of this childlike substance to it. Some of the angles that I did like, though, one of the angles was the nun, the sister Mary Helena, and she appears now and again to the doctor who's helping the kids in the psychiatric
It turns out she's
ward.
a ghost.
Yeah, it turns out she's a ghost at the end. Well, it turns out that she's telling the story of Mrs. Krueger, who was locked.
Which is her.
Yeah, I was trying to reveal it a little bit. Yeah, it's her.
Oh, I thought you were just... I was like, why is he not saying the obvious?
It's her, but it's more that she appears and she's telling the story of how she was raped by 100 inmates and how Freddy is the bastard son of 100 maniacs.
Which is not how science works, but anyway.
It's not how science works, but it's just...
She's the bastard son of one maniac.
It's the poetry of it.
Yeah, but again, this
It's beautiful.
ties into, as much as I thought that was, again, interesting backstory and stuff, but I feel like they used it almost in an angle to be like, oh yeah, poor Freddy, like he didn't deserve to be burnt to death. But I think it doesn't matter who fathered you, molesting children is wrong.
I'm trying to give this movie something. Yeah, this movie at this point isn't about really molesting children. They kind of moved away from that already, really, with the second one. Again, the first one kind of stands alone. The rest of what we get is kind of like a bunch of executives making decisions, which have nothing to do with the originality of the character, origins of the character. But yeah, you are completely right, because it can't come out of your mind that he is a child molester.
Well, they insinuate that even in the third one, in that beautiful opening sequence that you mentioned.
I'm not even saying that it's a good thing that they have the nun, this whole nun story angle in this movie. I'm just saying that I liked the angle of that storyline part, and it could have been in any other movie, and it's cool. I'm trying to give this movie something, because away from the effects and the kills, so we mentioned the puppet one, then you got Jennifer who gets shoved through the television, and
Yes.
welcome to prime time, bitch, that classic one. There's not a lot for me going for it. That's why I used to kind of prefer the second one, because it was more, if you want to call it adult, slightly in nature, certainly sexually adult in nature. But in the third one had the whole kid thing, which I just didn't enjoy. The young children in the ward. It was the whole reason why I couldn't watch the second season of Chucky, because I just don't enjoy watching, like, say, 14 or 15-year-olds making out on camera. Which is what happened a lot in the first episode of Chucky season 2.
With the deaths as well, it wasn't as obvious right at the start, but then it became really obvious from the injection fingers. So
That was cool.
all of the kids who are having these dreams, the ones who were actually killed by Freddy, die in a way that's correlated to their real life. So the one in the TV screen, she wanted to be an actress, so that's why TV death.
Yeah, Jennifer, yeah.
The ex-addict gets re-injected with drugs from Freddy's fingers.
That's really cool when she showed up in the alleyway, and
So
she's
gross.
like back to her former stomping ground trying to score drugs according to Freddy, and his knives in his glove turn into
Syringes.
and he injects her to death,
And the magical wizard guy is in a wheelchair in regular life. He can walk in his dreams,
And
and
more.
it's a like demented jaggedy wheelchair that attacks him like a raging bull.
That was a really cruel angle. That was Freddy taunting the kid with his wheelchair, saying, you know, I'm going to send you back to here. You will never walk again.
But this brings me to the special effects, because the amount of times I saw strings in this film was ridiculous. So you can see all the strings pulling that wheelchair in that scene. You can see string holding the kid up when Freddy finally is supposed to be holding him up by the neck. But you can see the string holding him. I mean, this, yeah.
So what you're saying is, don't watch this movie in 4K.
Absolutely.
Because you'll see strings.
You'll see so many special effects blunders, and this is kind of, again, took away from it and made it more kiddish, because when you can see how everything's being done, it's just funny rather than scary.
Talk about funny rather than scary. This is where we really get the more comical Freddy take over. So every time he kills someone, he'll do his little punchline. As I said, welcome to prime time, bitch, for Jennifer. And when he injects that girl in the alleyway, he says, let's get high. Ooh, what a rush. And it kind of continues from there onwards at an unbelievable pace in the rest of the movies. Freddy had to say something.
But he's become more intimidating again in this one than he was in the second one. And he's actually seems like more of a threat. And I don't really get why they added the subplot of them having these special dream powers, because, like we've said, it took away from it, made it super childish.
Well, if you didn't add this angle,
it doesn't seem to really have any effect. Like, they could have easily just not had the superpowers, and the same stuff would have happened.
If you didn't have the kids having special powers angle, then you wouldn't have got the wizard guy fighting Freddy Krueger and saying, "I am the wizard master. In name of Auric, wizard of elves, demon be gone." And then try to rid.
But it didn't even work. This is what
Freddy
I'm saying.
Krueger.
What's the point of having these dream powers that don't have any effect?
What's the point in most of this movie? Who the hell thought up the bloody child wizard? It's just Harry Potter turning up before Harry Potter came out as a movie.
They
probably
had to
even
give
a
them
book.
all their unique characters, and he was the nerdy Dungeons and Dragons playing guy.
So anytime a wizard shows up in a movie, I know that you're nuts for wizards. Like, you're a wizard nut. You're even insisting that I dress as a wizard for one of the 31 costumes for Halloween, and that's the only one I've heard where you're adamant I'm being a wizard because you like the wizard with their long staff.
That's fabrication, pure fabrication. But you will be dressing as a wizard.
Yeah. So as I said, wizard shows up, fear is gone. Back to Kincaid. At the end, when they're all fighting Freddy to end him, just Kincaid shouting at an invisible Freddy, like calling him out, "Come on, you bitch, Freddy!" I was just like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Kincaid, you're an idiot.
What's super strength going to do against razor gloves?
Yeah. We also, John Saxon returned to this movie. Not Nancy's dad, the lieutenant.
Nancy Senior.
And Nancy's father is, in this movie, he's an alcoholic.
Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure I liked what they did with his
No,
character.
I did not like what they did with his character. It's John Saxon. And
they did him a disservice.
It absolutely did him a disservice. And you got that stupid bit where, after he's died, because he teams up with Dr. Rick. Dr. Rick is the guy's name who
Not that he wants
Nancy
to, he's
teams
kind of
up with.
into it.
Yeah, and he's forced into it because he's still trying not to believe everything that's happened, isn't he? He can't wrap his head around Freddy Krueger coming back and haunting children with dreams.
But he loves Nancy, so
Yeah.
of course he's starting
So
to
they go to like this scrapyard where they find, they go to find the remains of Freddy, and then we get an animated skeleton coming at them both. Did you like the Freddy skeleton?
Again, my mind was a bit blown in that moment. Oh no, it was so badly done. It was comedic, and there's even a point where the choreography of the skeleton attacking someone involves him like doing a full 360 spin, and like they did it in such slow motion as well, as if they were physically trying to move each bone in the frame. Yeah, mind-blowing.
Yeah, when they're at...
And how can he do that? How can he just suddenly possess the physical being of his skeleton? That's breaking the rules, surely.
When they're at the scrapyard and the skeleton is causing havoc, at the same time we've got Joey the Wizard. He's tied up by Freddy in the dream world with like the hell coming below him again.
No, that's not the wizard guy. That's the one who can't speak.
Oh yeah, Joey's a silent guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Joey the mute. And just the way that they managed to stop him was not satisfactory.
Oh, and that was another one, tongue-tied. That was their play because, as I mentioned, with everyone being killed in something to do with their real life, he can't speak, so Freddy uses 4 elongated tongues to tie him to the bedpost.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's wrong? You're a little bit tongue-tied?" It's like,
Yeah.
wow, they've really gone hard with this whole joke.
But with it was Joey, right? You said was the mute guy.
Oh, I don't remember their names.
Joey the mute.
That's what you said.
Yeah, So Joey tongue-tied to the bed, but this is after in this movie. There's a sexy nurse abound in the hospital, and Joey clearly has a crush on her, and in Joey's dream, before he is wrapped up by these tongues, it's the sexy nurse that comes after him. And Joey must be what, like 14, 15 years old?
Like I said, it's really hard for me to tell her age.
And then this unbelievable nurse disrobes in front of him and shows off her majesty, climbs on top of him. I was thinking, out of all the ways to go in this movie, I think I would have chosen Joey's, because at least before being wrapped up by tongues and clawed at,
I wonder how that
I would have had a nice memory. What, the guy or the girl? I can tell you the guy was feeling.
Both, actually, I suppose, for different reasons. I did enjoy, I think I enjoyed all the actors, which is rare for me.
Oh, we got Lawrence Fishburne as the orderly.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I think everyone, even the matron, I thought was really good in her role. I liked the doctor in his role. None of the kids annoyed me. The character of Kincaid I thought was crap, but that's nothing to say the actor was terrible. I think he did what he was supposed to do. But the special effects let it down, which is a shame because, again, they managed to do the marionette thing really well, actually. When I think of that, I didn't have any
special effects let it down. I think the special effects are the highlight, apart from you seeing the strings.
That's what
the giant Freddy snake.
Yeah, the Freddy snake head, that was gross. He's like swallowing her down in one piece.
Apparently,
which is lucky for her, because otherwise she wouldn't have survived it.
When the effects team made the Freddy snake, it seems to be a running problem in horror genre, much like Hellraiser 2, that the Freddy snake looks too phallic. So they had to put goo all over it to take away from its phallic likeness. Which happens with Dr. Channon in number 2, if you remember, when the thing attaches to his head and starts lifting him up and taking him through hell.
Yeah, and I don't see why they didn't just curl his body up a bit, because I've never seen a phallus curled up.
So if you're ever trying to make a snaky thing with practical effects, apparently it's hard not to fall into the trap of making it look phallic. Not enjoying or not finding that the kids having a special powers angle worked for you reminded me of when the Doctor and Nancy are having the unauthorized meeting with all of them, and they fall asleep and show off their powers, and they're all kind of reacting like, wow, oh my god, did he really do that? Just dumb.
That was so childish. And I don't even mind childish things. I watch a lot of childish movies. I love Scooby-Doo. But that took you completely out of any horror feeling.
What do you think about the rule that because all of these kids dream of Freddy, that they can tag each other in to a dream? So Kristen tags in Nancy originally, and that's how Nancy finds out.
Well, that's not a rule that they can all do. That's the thing that I was saying, that only Kristen has this power, and I was saying that power I would have kept, that she can pull people into her dreams.
She has that, and it's also super acrobatic.
Yeah,
so she has multiple
the bit
things.
I wouldn't have said she should have. She shouldn't have the acrobatics.
Specifically, what do you think about just being able to pull someone in?
Well, I already talked about this, and I said I think that was actually quite a fun angle. Quite like that she could pull everyone in, but only her.
But for A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise the only way to defeat him is, again, bring him out. But we've done that in the first one, so I thought this was a good angle to get them to fight him in the dream world. But then it seemed a bit unnecessary to have the whole skeletal remains thing as well. It was like they came up with 2 ideas for how to put Freddy to rest and couldn't decide, so they tried to do them both.
When Freddy tries to trick Nancy at the end by appearing as her father, John Saxon. Just having John Saxon die, as I said, was not cool, I don't think. And just the little sparkles that were behind John Saxon when he appears as dead John Saxon was, yeah, I don't know what to say about that really. Especially at that point when we don't know that it's really Freddy. It looked incredibly dumb. When it is revealed that it is Freddy, Nancy dies. Nancy dies.
It's just permanent now. It's no longer Nancy Thompson, it's Nancy.
It's such a like American Nancy.
Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy. I just.
That's the English way of saying it as well.
Yeah, it just feels unnatural.
British, shall I say?
It feels unnatural. Kristen also has a bit of a promiscuous mother, and we get Freddy turning up in his best tuxedo and decapitates her and calls her like a slut whore bitch or something like that before doing so.
And then the decapitated head talks to her daughter as well.
Yeah,
ruin my day.
I'd like to know if there's a Freddy Krueger tuxedo figure out there, action figure. I bet it's probably like limited edition and costs £450 to buy or something like that.
Fashion one ourselves, otherwise.
Yeah, you're good at fashioning.
Just get a regular Freddy and sew a little tuxedo for it.
There was another nice effect I thought when drug addict girl was in the alleyway, and it showed all the sores coming to life on her skin. That it was all like they were talking sores almost.
That really reminded me of that phobia, or is tryptophobia or something. You've got fear of like holes.
Trichotillomycobacophobia. Yeah, who knows what it is.
And yeah, I don't have that phobia, but I can understand what people feel because I don't like it either, and the way that they were moving at you. Ugh. Yeah, that was gross.
The way that the series moves on after this, you haven't seen 4, 5, and 6. You've seen number 7, which was New Nightmare.
And I've seen Freddy vs. Jason.
And you've seen Freddy vs. Jason, and you haven't seen the remake. 4, 5, and 6 just go in the direction of, let's just do effects, like really cool effects, and not really worry about anything else after this. And then, as you say, then it gets to New Nightmare. Then we've got Freddy vs. Jason, the remake. The remake like really sucked so hard, and there hasn't been any Freddy since then. With the 3 that you've seen, and knowing that it just carries on being an effects movie, what is your perfect? If you could meld it all together, what would you want to see from a Freddy movie going forward? A new Freddy movie, seeing as you can kind of go anywhere because he haunts people in their
Freddy
dreams.
in space. I'm joking.
I actually, because of the whole Chucky in space thing we've been talking about, and then I searched for it the other day on the internet, and I had to type in a lot of letters to get there, but finally came out Chucky in space. And apparently, it has been discussed before by Don Mancini himself, and it's been around for a little while. But there's not too much of an idea out there. We've put ours out there. I then started thinking, why the hell couldn't you put Freddy in space?
You could, but
Freddy could have been, but I'm not ready for Freddy. I need something more serious first.
Yeah, it's not what I want from it. I'd want to go, back to the tone of the first.
The remake was supposed to be, is the more serious tone. It's just not a good movie. So you'd have to not do a remake. Obviously, you just do a new Freddy story. You could base it in 1984 if you wanted to. You could base it in 78, whatever. You could go in it. It could be modern day.
I mean, I don't know if I'd necessarily want it as a Freddy movie, but right now, off the top of my head, something potentially interesting could be, I hate this term for it, but the origins thing. So you have...
Well, they also do a mini origin thing in the remake as well, showing Freddy before he becomes the infamous Freddy.
I feel like you could follow, one of these parents who was part of the lynching gang that eventually took him down, and it could be more like a thriller, but that would be...
That's something that's really got to be fleshed out then.
It would be a completely different thing though. So
but there's no Freddy in that though, really, or unless
well, it's about
to the
Freddy,
end.
and it's like a true crime thing, but Freddy. So it's before he's in the dreams, before he dies, when he's committing the crimes.
That's an angle I wasn't expecting you to come from. So at least that's something, I guess. But yeah, certainly after the remake, there needs to be... Well, I don't even have any faith in anything that people make these days, especially rehashing stuff. But Freddy needs to come back to the screen because there's so much you could mine from it. And if you just had a little bit of imagination, like me, you could probably go somewhere with it.
I would love it if it could be done really well. But for now, I feel like with the climate of things, it should just be left alone for a bit. I don't have any faith in a great Freddy movie coming out right now.
Do you think that when Nancy's father, John Saxon, comes back, do you think he's not an alcoholic anymore? He's quit the booze.
He's dead.
Or do you think that ghosts can also be alcoholics?
No, he'll live.
Do you think he carried on his alcoholism in ghost life?
Ghosts, they've always kind of come to terms with what they did in their lives. So.
But do you reckon if you go to heaven as an alcoholic, because you're a good man, but you're a big drinker, that in heaven you can just drink to your heart's content and just not get hungover?
Sure.
So maybe then John Saxon did appear momentarily through Freddy back to his sober self from number one, the one who took his job seriously, not the one that whiled away his days in a dark, dank pub.
Whilst still wearing his sheriff's uniform.
He's definitely been drinking on the job because it was still daytime in the bar scene.
He doesn't wear any civilian clothes at any point. Whether he's downing his drinks or going to dig up a skeleton, he's always wearing his sheriff uniform.
Yeah, he's married to his job, and his mistress
the only clothes he owns
is the demon booze. Do you think this is a good movie?
Which one?
Number 3. Would you watch all of... Well, forget number 1, because obviously that's classic. Would you watch number 2? Would you happily watch 2 and 3 again?
Yes, but I'd need a bit of a break.
I would say they get worse as they go along. So 4, 5 and 6, especially number 6, is just, what the hell's going on here? Number 4 takes it to silly heights. Like Freddy appears as a wicked witch in the window, riding a broom. Stuff like that. Oh, he's also, I think he also like possesses some meatballs on pizza. Either way, there's Freddy and meatballs on the pizza. So that's what you've got to look forward to. It just says everything that they bring Freddy back after hiring a stuntman. What do you reckon that stuntman was doing? Especially because it's number 2. So imagine that he's right. You're at the pool now, Freddy, and you're not in your dream sequence, and you're just in real life. Just go and be Freddy. Like, can you imagine what someone who's not a classically trained actor like Robert Englund was doing under this kind of direction and duress? Because also it was a harsh environment for filming number 2, because Bob Shaye was apparently there every day because the budget was so tight and they needed to make money that everything was micromanaged. And with all this going on, you've got a stuntman with no acting experience playing Freddy.
I doubt he would have done much different in terms of the actions, but...
as good as Robert Englund is...
You have to have the right figure and everything as well.
As great as Robert Englund is, I bet that stuntman did a lot for his just locking down Freddy forever. I thought, this is what a nobody can do, is this. We need to get the guy back. Where does Freddy rank in your, horror anti-heroes? Chucky's your favourite. Whereabouts does Freddy come? Top 5?
Yeah.
Top 3?
Top 5.
Do you like him better than Jason and Michael? Michael Myers?
Yeah.
Yeah, you like him better than Pinhead? Leatherface?
No, not Pinhead.
Leatherface? Ghostface?
Yeah, I mean, Ghostface as well is hard to say as your favourite because it's multiple different people. They don't... Yeah.
Ghostface is Ghostface.
But it's still got good dialogue. I don't know. Top 5.
If we're looking at top 3.